as does anyone in our profession right now, but please don't look so alarmed. I'm not going to bludgeon you with it. I hope that our most eloquent communication can be through music, but just allow me 5 minutes. More than 40 years ago, I had an unforgettable conversation with the wonderful and much missed stage and opera director, Sir Peter Hall, when we were working together in Glyndebourne. He was in this time, in the Thatcher years, running the National Theatre, and was very much someone who was defending the whole cultural sector. And we sat and had lunch. I said, Peter, it's a cheeky question, but it seems like every month the Prime Minister is attacking you from the Commons. How does that feel? He says, well, to be honest, Simon, it doesn't feel wonderful, but someone has to do it. And then Peter looked and did his most charming smile with the most mischievous twinkle in his eyes and said, and guess what? It'll be your turn next. And so, thank you, Peter. You would probably say this much better than I do. But there we are. The last few months have been devastating for our sector. After the Arts Council's swinging cuts in November, which had affected all of us and left some extraordinary groups fighting for their lives, we were all stopped in our tracks at the proposed vandalism by the BBC, of which the closure of the BBC Singers was only the tip of the iceberg. When the two largest supporters of classical music in this country cut away at the flesh of our culture in this way, it means that the direction of travel has become deeply alarming. It's clear we are facing a long-term fight for existence, and we cannot just quietly acquiesce to this dismantling or dismembering of so many important companies. There's nobody here tonight, even musicians, who do not recognize the enormous challenges faced by the world at present, in this country in particular, where people are struggling even to feed and heat themselves. But none of this is a force majeure. It is rooted in political choices. And we do have to ask ourselves, when we are hopefully the other side of this, what kind of country do we want to live in? I, for one, am hoping that classical music will still be able to flourish. And of course, the musicians here have had no choice but to become past masters at doing more with less. But the closeness to the edge means that as support is constantly cut, there's no more room to maneuver, and inevitably, organisations will start to fail. And as other political decisions affect music in schools and then music colleges, the vital organic pipeline that feeds our music will start to run dry. We understand it's a time of belt-tightening, and that change is inevitable. We could help if we were ever asked or consulted. Classical music is still a very fragile, interconnected ecosystem, and we know about adapting it without damaging any of the vital functions along the way. This is frankly not true of many of the people who are currently making decisions without any coherent plan. Of course, they are also in a difficult situation as the government has slashed their financial possibilities. Political choice. But there's a kind of dishonesty at the heart of many of the decisions. George Orwell would recognise the language, refresh the administration, reimagine the art form. They're two bits of newspeak which mean the opposite of the actual words, but you can all choose your own personal idiocies. Anyone with knowledge of how an orchestra actually functions will know you can't reduce the membership by 20% by natural wastage or in any other means. It's then no longer an orchestra. And also all the years of building up a team expertise have gone out of the window. This shouldn't need explaining. If you actually want opera to be experienced in more parts of the country, it's ludicrous to cut the grants of companies who do exactly that. This shouldn't need explaining. And by the way, without an orchestra or chorus, you no longer have an opera company. These are not things that can just be reassembled later or bought in from IKEA, or not yet at least. This should not need explaining. So many of the problems are rooted in a political ignorance of what this art form entails. And more worryingly, there seems to be a stubborn pride in the ignorance. Up and down the country, the situation is similar. What we hope is that over the next weeks and months, many more of these stories will be told. We're in a fight, and we need to ensure that classical music remains part of the beating heart of our country and of our culture. And now, I hope a more pleasant part of the evening. This extraordinary masterpiece, Figure Humaine, written in wartime, written in occupied Paris, a piece that could not be performed there for obvious reasons. Any of you who have read the texts will know why. The piece was smuggled out bit by bit to England, to, at that time, the only chorus they knew who could really sing it. Surprise, surprise, the BBC singers. So they have gone back with this piece to the very beginning. And now, as this extraordinary group is about to have its centenary, which would have been so cruelly taken away from them, I would love you to welcome on the stage the BBC singers for Poulenc's Figure Humaine. Thank you so much.